Welcome to the Beyond Wellness podcast. I'm here with Gurukirat Kaur. She's one of our hypnotherapists at Wellington Natural Health. How are you doing today, Gurukirat?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So we are here today to chat about, path between religion and spirituality, and how that can kind of look for different people. Like in your story, why don't you tell us a little bit about your story, starting for where you grew up? Because you grew up in India, right?
I grew up in India. I grew up in a small town. It's actually not small, actually. As compared to Vancouver, it's bigger. But as compared to Indian cities, it's small. It's called Amritsar. That's basically, if you know any Sikh people, that's basically, you can say, or Jerusalem. I don't want to compare it to, but that's the beginning and the end of Sikhism. That's where our most important temple is, Golden Temple, and that's the city I was born in. So I was born like right into the religion, and I went to a Catholic school, which is surprising to a lot of people. For my coworkers, it's surprising that my favorite holiday is Christmas, but that comes from me going to a Catholic school until I was in grade 12.
So you went to a Catholic school in India?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It's called Sacred Heart. It's actually based in Germany. And it has its branches. It actually is pretty old, so it had its branches all over the British Empire before, during the colonization time. So I think there is one in Canada as well. So that's a school that I went to, and it was an all-girls school, so it was a very different environment. And the locality that I was living in, it was all Hindus, and there was like all Hindu temples. So I was like in the middle of different religions. And that's how I grew up. For my family, they never forced me to follow religion. They kind of left it open-ended for me to explore. But the environment, the moment you step out of the house, was different. It was like, you have to pick a religion. You have to be somewhere. So I decided I'm going to be an atheist. That's how I grew up. So I think until I was 19 or 20, I was an atheist.
So your family practiced Hinduism?
No, my family practiced Sikhism.
Okay.
And
then you went to a Roman Catholic school.
I went to a Roman Catholic.
You decided that you didn't want to do any of it.
I think that's a different experience. Anybody has been to, I know a lot of people in Chilliwack go to Catholic schools, so I think I can relate with that.
Yeah.
But here in this area, because I live in Langley, and even in other parts of Canada, I haven't seen or met anyone who have been to a Catholic school, and they're surprised that I did that in India. But that was the best school in the town, so I had to. Yeah.
So how did that work for you? Like, if you decided that you were going to, was the word rebel the right word? Like, did you decide?
Yes, I think for me, that was the rebel. That was my way of saying fuck you to the religion that I was growing up with.
Right.
Not just I mean, it was more about like, because you see that every day. And when it is so ingrained in society, you also see the not so good part about the religion, right? And the not so good part was the reason why I was like, there's no point if like you call yourself a religious person, but in the end you're doing the shittiest thing possible to other humans. There's no point that I can follow such a path if that path has not enlightened you or has not given you enough mental you would say openness to accept other people. This is how I see, because growing up in so many religions around me, this is how I see it now. I feel like different religions are different paths that lead to the same destination.
Okay. Well, and of course, everybody's going to have different opinion about their religions or other religions that they've seen.
Yeah.
I don't think that's what we're discussing, though, is this is not your opinion for others to accept or kind of go forward with, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So what I saw in the society at that time was people were like, "Oh, I'm following this path. This is the only right path. Yours is wrong." Does it make sense? It's like
Yeah.
growing up as a kid, I had this understanding that how can a different path that leads to the same destination be wrong
Right.
and your path can be correct? Like, it just like, it is your journey. Like, however you want to go to the destination. Destination is the one that matters. How you get there does it. So
Well, and how
either
you
you
get there
can,
is your personal path too, right? Like how it's not
yes,
going to be the same for everybody.
exactly.
Yeah.
So this is how I saw it growing up. And that's when I was like, okay, I'm an atheist because I don't believe in all these paths. But then one day, um, while I was growing up, I would say in my early 20s, um, I was in a very dark period in my life. I think I was in depression for 2 or 3 years by then. And I met someone who was not an Indian, who was not even brown, I would say. That
Yeah.
person was from New York. And he was visiting my city because of the religion that's around, and he was following Sikhism, and he was born into Judaism. So he
Okay.
was a Jew who was following Sikhism now. He's a very famous photographer for New York Times, and that's how I met him because I used to follow him on Instagram. And he just asked for someone to show him around the city. I volunteered, so that's what I was doing. And then we were sitting in Golden Temple. Golden Temple is the temple that I was talking about. Like that's the one where most of the Sikh people they go to India for. So I used to go there every day, and I don't know why I used to do that. Because I was not religious, but sort of it gave me peace to be in that place. So I used to go there every day. So we were sitting, and he said something that really sticks to me until now as well. He was like, you know what, you're born right into this, and people like me have to learn it on their own. There is nobody to guide us. There's nobody to show us the path, and you are born right into it. You have your family to guide you. You have your community to guide you. How come you are not following the path? And that's when I was kind of shocked and surprised at the same time that before this, I never saw myself even considered lucky to be born in that place where I can be in Golden Temple every day.
Yeah.
But that's when I started following the religion because he asked me another question after that. He's like, if I teach you how to meditate, will you do it? And all of a sudden I said yes. And I don't, until this day, I don't know how and why I said yes. Because by that time, my parents have tried enough. My mom was like, you should meditate, you should meditate. But I was like, no, I'm not going to do it ever. And then I went home and I told my mom, and my mom is like, so this foreigner comes to you and tells you to meditate and you're ready to do it. I have
Yeah.
been telling you for years and you haven't done it. So, anyways, but she was happy that at least I was going on that path. And he taught me how to meditate, and that's where I started my first. I started my religious journey, and then I started my spiritual journey. So I went via religion to spirituality. Yeah.
I've got so many questions. First, the one thing that kind of pops into my head when you were telling me that is just how we can take for granted something that's so huge for somebody else. Like for people all over the world who want to practice Sikhism to travel to go spend time at that location, and you being born there and going, nope, I want nothing to do with this. Like,
Yeah.
it's interesting. But I mean, are you grateful for that eye-opening experience? Like now
I
that you look
am.
back, is
I
there
am
anything?
like more than grateful for that experience.
Yeah.
And I think it has to happen that way because I think when you're born into something, you never notice it.
Right.
You are so, your eyes are blinded because that's a way of life for you. That's not something that is out of the ordinary.
Mm-hmm.
It's unless and until somebody else who comes in and show you, okay, this is very important what you're doing. For me, that was my lifestyle. Like
Yeah.
what people do here, as yoga, meditation, and everything. I was born into it. For me, it was just like everybody does it.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know people were like, so they were willing to travel miles to learn all this, something that I grew up in and I just innately knew
Yeah.
as part of my family lineage, religious lineage, or anything. Like, I didn't know at that time. I was too naive to understand this. So yes, I was kind of not looking in the direction. Yeah, that's what.
So then what was the next step? You decided to start meditating. How did that kind of branch out, or like, I guess, start your religious journey?
So I started meditating. I started, as I said, I was going to Golden Temple every day. I was doing something called Seva. Seva is basically, you can see like even in the Gurdwaras here, if you've ever been to, like nobody gets paid to do the work. It's basically volunteer work.
Okay.
So you just do it out of free will, as that's a type of meditation as well, by the way. So I started doing that. I started reading my religious literatures, which I hadn't. For us, for Sikhs, it's like we don't have a living uh, God or Guru. We have a scripture. We have a scripture, and that is our teacher.
Okay.
That's how, like, in Sikhism is. So I started reading the scriptures.
So
I started
which,
understanding it, which was very new and weird to me because until then I didn't. It wasn't like I learned somewhere. It's just that I read it and I understood it. For me, that was an experience that I can't even explain how important or how I don't have words how to explain that experience that I read it, and it's not written in the simple language. It's basically a mixture of different languages, and nobody talks that language anymore.
hmm.
It's a mixture of Persian, Arabic, and Punjabi and Sanskrit. So it's like four different languages that's it's written in, and I understood it. So that was very surprising to me.
So
Um,
is that just one book? Is that one scripture,
yes,
or was it
it's one
which which
scripture.
which is it? What
It's
is it?
called Guru Granth Sahib Ji. So if you go to a Gurdwara anywhere in this lower mainland, you'll find it like if you ever been to a Gurdwara, you might notice that we bow to something. That's the scripture. It's not the person sitting behind the scripture. A lot of people think it's the person sitting behind the scripture. It's actually the scripture.
Okay.
So it's like it's a teacher. We learn from it. So I started doing that. And from there, once I started meditating, a lot of things started happening in my life which I didn't anticipate for. First of all, most of the important thing that happened was I moved to Canada. I was not willing to move to Canada before that. So once I started meditating, I think almost in 11 days or 21 days after I started meditating, I went to my father and I'm like, okay, I'm ready to move to Canada. Because my family was here, but I was not ready to move.
Hmm.
So that's how I decided to move to Canada. And everything was done within 40 days, and that's how I ended up here. The reason for that was when I was meditating, I had this realization that everything that I'm looking for is here in Canada. And it was very specific about where to go first. And then it was very specific about that in the end, you're going to end up in Vancouver. Like it was so specific at that time. I was surprised, but at that time I was so disciplined in my meditation and everything that it just made sense. So I
How
packed my
did
bag, I moved. So it was like initially it was like, you gotta go to Ontario first. And it was very specific on the city as well, which was London, Ontario. So that's where I ended up first. That's where I did my studies. And then I got my co-op here in Vancouver.
Mhm.
So now when I look back, it all makes sense. But at that time, it was not making sense to me. But I was following my intuition, whatever was coming for. So I was just following whatever was coming forward at that time.
How were you shown, like, was it just situational? Like, how, let's say when they said to move to London, Ontario, like, was that just situational, or was that like you were told? How did that show up for you? You know what I'm
So for me, it was, how did it show up to me? For me, it was just a realization. It was nothing that I hear. It was more about, like, all of a sudden, I get the realization it has to be London, Ontario. I
And
go
so
to my
you
dad.
just
I'm like, okay, it has to be London, Ontario.
and you listened and you went. And same with Vancouver. And
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah. I
very
can't differentiate between Claire's.
cool.
So for me, whichever comes, I just take it.
Right. So just in 40 days, you decided you spoke to the gentleman from New York, and
Yeah.
then you decided you're going to start meditating and accept everything as you'd been told to. And so then just that fast, you were out of India
Yeah.
and in Canada
Yeah.
and kind of on
And
your
it's not like I was not doing anything in India that time. At that time, I was preparing for army in India. I
oh,
was gonna join army as an officer. And I given my exams and everything. Everything was done. So I had two paths to choose from.
right.
But my meditation said, no, you have to be in Canada. So I left everything and I moved. One thing that I don't regret it until this day, but at that time it was a very hard decision for me.
I was going to say that must have been scary.
It was scary
Yeah.
because that was something I have worked for years. So
Yeah.
imagine you wanted something since a kid and you worked for years to get that. The moment you get it, all of a sudden you take a different path and you
It
have to start
happens
from
though.
zero again, right?
Yeah.
So I had to start from zero here because I didn't, when I was in London, I didn't know anyone. My family was here in BC. So I had to figure out everything on my own. That was not easy, but at the same time, I was meditating and my meditation was telling me, no, this is what we are supposed to do. No, this is what we're supposed to do. And now it all makes sense. If I wasn't here, I wouldn't have met my husband. If I wasn't here, I wouldn't have had the job that I have today. If I wasn't here, I wouldn't have been spiritual. My spiritual journey started in India, but it expanded multifold in Canada,
So then,
especially after I moved to Vancouver.
so how do you differentiate between your journeys of your religious journey and your spiritual journey? Why is that different for you?
So, religion is confined to one specific path or one specific thing, right? Spirituality is openness. Spirituality is understanding that even if I'm not meditating today and I'm doing something else, that can also be my meditation. Religion is no, you gotta do this, this, and that to get here. Spirituality is free flowing
All over the place.
all over the place. It
Yeah.
can be anything. Like I might plan it, but when I wake up that day, I might do completely different things. And
Right.
it's okay. And also, I think once you start meditating with time, you understand that doesn't matter what you're doing, doesn't matter which path you're following, you will end up at the same place. As I said about religions, like spirituality is the same thing. You become more open to other people's view, you become more open to other people's paths, and you become more open to understanding how things are linked and how things are working out. Like it's all in the flow once you become spiritual.
Right.
Like eventually you have to either leave the religion and completely go to spirituality, or you kind of end up being more accepting of both the things.
You say, do you have to leave one in order to join the other, or can you kind of
You can
choose
do
your own
both. I'm
path and
doing
combine
both.
them both?
I'm doing both at this time.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't left the religion, but I'm also spiritual. So I do both. It's like you don't have to leave anything. Why can't it be all? You know?
Good question. Yeah.
I like the way I grew up is the biggest example. If I was with a person who was following a certain different religion, I would behave that way. And if I was with a person who was on a different religion, I would behave that way. That's how I grew up. It doesn't matter. Like it's all the same.
Yeah.
The more spiritual you become, the more you grow in your spirituality, you realize it's all same. All the languages are same, all the different stories are same that you listen to. It's the same story with different names in different religions.
Right. Yeah, all
So
different words with the exact or with a similar
yeah,
outcome. But I guess based, it's either fueled in a belief or an acceptance.
yeah, it's all one. That is what you realize once you become spiritual. Like, it doesn't matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter if I'm following Sikhism today and tomorrow I become a Christian, as long as I'm spiritual and I'm following the same thing. Like, inside me, it's all
Yeah.
gonna be same. Inside you is same as well.
Yeah. So then how, when you were in Ontario, moved to Vancouver, you said that's when your spiritual path started. So what did that look like for you? How did that kind of switch and happen?
So when I moved to Vancouver, I think around that time I wasn't meditating. I stopped meditating for that bit. And I was going through a very shitty phase in my life at that time. Um, and again, I was feeling very low. And at that time, I had this calling that I need to be with the community. I cannot do it on my own. Like, I tried meditating on my own, I couldn't do it. So I found this Yoga West is where I used to go in Vancouver. It's in Kits. So I used to work in downtown at that time. So when I looked for yoga near my workplace, that was the closest. That was like 5 minutes from my workplace. And I didn't know that. And that was the type of meditation that were taught to me by that guy. So I was more attracted to that. And that's how I ended up in that place. The moment I ended up, I knew I was home. I cried. I literally cried a lot. That's why I tell my, that's why whoever comes to my meditation class, in the first
Yeah.
class, I'm like, it's okay to cry.
Yeah.
Because you always
Sometimes when
end.
you're in your meditation class, you don't have a choice.
Yeah, I'm like, it's
Yeah.
okay. No, some people hold it back. I'm like, no, cry. You
Yeah.
should. That's why you're
Yeah.
here.
I know I
So
have.
that's when I, yeah. So that's when I was like, okay, I am in the community that I'm supposed to be in. And then I went to this yoga camp. It was a women's camp. It was in Mission. They have it every year in August. So that's when things started opening up for me again. And everybody there was like, "Are you a teacher? You must be a yoga teacher." I'm like, "No, I'm not." And I had a career at that point. I work in IT. So I'm like, why would I become a yoga teacher if I'm like, I'm an engineer? Why
Right.
would I do that? So they were like, no, you should do it. You already have that. It feels like you're good at teaching. I'm like, I don't even know. So I left the camp 2 days after that. When I got home, all of a sudden, again, it was that feeling that you have to do this teacher training and you have to do it now. I didn't have the money at that time, so I borrowed it from my sister. So I did the yoga teacher training, and that changed my life. Um, I did that. Now I, after doing that, I realized I want to work with the mind, and that's how I ended up doing hypnotherapy. So it was like one thing led to the other, and then I did certain other things, as you know. I did tarot, numerology, astrology, Reiki.
Yeah.
So it's like one thing after the other. It just, the ball kept on rolling, and I rolled with it. That's
Yeah.
how I ended up here where I am today.
So I just want to go back to when you felt that it was necessary, that it was your time to do the yoga teacher training, that's what you had to do. I've spoken about this a couple times, is that when you're being guided to do something, it is just like there's an urgency in your head. Like, I have to do this. I don't know why, but I want to. And it's just almost all consuming, right? Like
Yeah.
it's one of those
It's like
situations
you can't
where
function.
you need to do it. And it's the strangest thing. Cause I think a lot of people, when they're presented with that situation, they're like, nope, this doesn't make any sense. Like you said, I had no money. Right. And so they'd be like, well, I don't have any money, and they leave it, when that's really the turning point for a lot of
Yeah.
people. But it doesn't make any sense, because no one's ever discussed it or spoken about how it's okay just to completely surrender to what's being presented to you.
Yeah. It's also for a lot of people, they do not understand intuition. They
Correct.
don't know how it works.
Yeah.
And when it comes, they feel like this is anxiety. That's how,
Yeah.
because the traits are same. You might be sweating, you might be shivering, and you might not be able to function until you do the thing that you're hearing you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And then there's so many blockages which are like, how am I going to do this? I don't have money. I don't have this. I don't have this. Well, once you decide you're going to do it, you make the decision, money will come, and money does come. That's how I have seen it.
Yeah.
Like, I've never, knock on the board, I've never had the situation where if I need money, the money is not there. It shows up somehow.
Yeah.
So you have to believe in that. And everybody is, I think from my experience, what I have seen, everybody at some point is on this crossroads where you have to decide whether you want to go into spirituality or you want to stick to your own path, whatever you're doing.
That's a
And
scary choice.
that's what decide your future.
Yeah.
So
Interesting. So you went and did your teacher training, and then that just kind of snowballed into all of the things.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Now
at
here
that
you
time, I
are.
didn't know anything. The first thing that I told my teacher on the very first day, and they have it recorded, and she always laughs on me whenever I see her, is I stood up in front of the whole class and I'm like, I'm here just to deepen my meditation. I do not want to teach. And I'm like, I'm never gonna teach. It's just for myself, for my spirituality.
Yeah.
And she was like, we'll see about that. So, and before I ended up my teacher training, I think I started teaching. So I finished my teacher training in June. I started teaching already in March because that's when the COVID happened. And again, I was not planning on teaching, but when COVID happened, I was meditating and I was feeling a lot. And I thought to myself, if I am meditating, I'm doing it every day, I am feeling this. What about the people who are not even meditating?
Right.
They're going through something very, very scary. So that's when just posted on my Instagram, on my social media, that I'm going to teach, and I'm going to teach free. Like, if anybody's interested, I can have a class. And people showed up. And that's how I started teaching.
That's very cool. So is that where your name came from?
Oh, that. So my name,
That's a pretty big
that's a
thing.
pretty big thing. Like, I didn't know that. Again, I was like, I was one of those people who would not accept whatever intuition is saying. Like, I'm a very logical person, and it also comes from my job, so I always question whatever I'm getting.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how so my name, my Gurukirat is basically my spiritual name. My given name is something else.
Yeah.
When I went to that yoga camp, the ladies camp that I went to, I was meditating. We all were meditating. It was a class. And all of a sudden, I hear this name, Gurukirat, like I thought somebody whispered, and my head turned. And then I was like, okay, come back to the meditation. And then it happened again, and again, my head turned. And I'm like, that's weird. But I wrote it down, right? And I didn't tell anyone at that time. And I didn't tell anyone even throughout my teacher training. So I just kept that with myself.
Yeah.
And then there was a class during my teacher training where my teacher talked about having a spiritual name and how it is tied to your date of birth, and there's whole numerology involved in this, and blah, blah, blah. So I was just listening, and all of a sudden Gurukirat came again. I'm like, okay. So I went to my teacher and I asked her, I'm like, there's a name, and that this is how I got it. So I told her how I got it. And I'm like, I don't know what to do with it. Like, should I get a spiritual name, or like, what is? And she was like, if I were you, I'll keep that. That is your spiritual name. So I kept that. But again, I didn't accept it completely because I didn't tell anyone again. It was just me and my teacher by that time.
Yeah.
So when I was doing my numerology training, there is something called name balancing in numerology. And my teacher at that time was balancing my given name, and it wasn't balancing. So she's like going around and around. She's like, why is it not balancing for you? Like, And then I was like, I have another name. And she's like, what is it? And like, it's Gurukirat. She's like, okay, let's try that. We tried it. It was balanced. There was nothing that needed to be changed in that name. And then she asked me, she's like, how did you get that name? So I told her, and she's like, you're an idiot. If you would have told me the story before, I wouldn't have asked you to balance it, because then I would have known it's going to be balanced.
Right.
And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, you know how, like, you're very lucky to get it that way. And a lot of people do not get it that way, the way you got it in your meditation. Because a lot of people go through a guru and get it and get the numerology and everything. Like, there's a whole fucking process. Um, and she was like, it was given to you by the spirit. Like, why wouldn't you accept it? I was like, okay, I'm sorry. So she was the one who made me accept it. And that's when I changed it on my social media and everything. I posted about it that this is gonna be my name going forward.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I changed it. This is how I got my name. During this process, the moment I changed my name, a lot of things happened. I lost a lot of friends. And now looking back, I see those people were not supposed to be in my life. So your name sets a tune of the type of people you'll be attracting, the type of work you'll be doing. So I saw it firsthand the moment I changed my name. There are a lot of things that changed in my life again. So,
That's very interesting.
yep.
You're just opening up a whole bunch of questions in my head. So then, where do we even go with this? Okay. What suggestion would you make for anybody who is on a specific path, whether it be religious or spiritual, that they feel that they're kind of lost, or they've received these messages and have an idea of which direction they should be going, but they're worried to kind of follow that and pick up and kind of go forward? Because sometimes the beliefs in different, like, we're just going to say religious or spiritual beliefs, societal beliefs, whatever you're exposed to and taught as you've grown up, or what you've kind of decided to believe, that's in there pretty good. So, like, is it safe to just pick up and choose the next path? Is it, what kind of advice would you give to someone to take that first step and kind of like, stop worrying so much, or stop being so fearful about it? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. The moment you chose a path, everything else will fall into place. You just have to pick it. You just have to start. There is no how to start. It just has to be like this. One day you have to do it and you have to accept it, whatever comes with it.
Yeah.
And it could be anything. It's not easy. I'm not gonna be like it's all sugar coated. Like, this is the conversation we had. I just told you the highlights. I haven't told you the low parts of doing this. Right? There's any path is not easy. But if you're not happy in your current path, then just switch and see what happens. Like, you're already not happy. What's the worst that can happen?
I guess you could just always go back.
You can always go back.
You can
Nobody's
choose
stopping you.
to cancel whatever you decided to do, right?
Yeah, just do it. Like, once you won't know until you do it.
Right.
And I can't be I wouldn't say, like, I can share my experience, but I cannot tell you how your experience is going to be. You're the only person who can tell how your experience is going to be. And that is only if you walk on it.
Right.
Right? So
I keep having conversations with people, and through all the things that each of us go through, the answer is just choose to make that decision.
yeah.
And it comes through so simply from all of us because we have been in that situation. And it's almost like, it feels like to someone who doesn't understand, or someone who's living in fear of making that decision, that it's just oversimplified, and that life's just going to be all roses and sunshine. And it's almost like once you're through it and you've made that decision, you understand that it can be that simple to choose, but you don't necessarily know how things are going to go, if things are going to be good or bad. Like you said, there's the ups and the downs, but overall everything balances out in the end. So that that's where you're supposed to be.
Yeah. Is also a pattern that I would like to discuss. I do discuss it in my class as well. Most of the people who come on a spiritual journey are above the age of 45. It's very hard to find a young person, especially at the age that I started. I was the youngest in my class, and everybody was like, "What's wrong in your life?" Because people come to the spiritual
what has
life.
happened to you?
Yeah, so people come to the spiritual path when they're like low in their life, when something big has happened, let's say you're going through a divorce, or let's say your kids have grown up, they've left, you have nothing else to do, you don't know who you are now.
Right.
So that's when you go on this path of like self-discovery. Who am I? And that's when you end up in a meditation class or a yoga class,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's when people come to spirituality. For youngsters, it's very hard because their life is still happening. For them to choose right now is like very big decision for them.
Yeah.
Whereas a person who has lived like 45 years, something of age, knows that there is nothing wrong in trying, right?
Right.
So it's hard for young people to walk on the path of spirituality. Also because of the social media and everything, we are so corrupted. We want a full proof of everything and we want everything to happen instantly.
Yeah.
That's not how it is. It's a practice. That's why it's called a practice. You do it every day. And things do shift and things do change and they do happen according to whatever is best for you. Only if you keep on practicing and you keep on showing up.
Mm-hmm.
Not because I did a meditation one day, nothing happened. Like one day, I used to meditate every day. Now I do it differently. But when I started, I continuously meditated for 6 or 7 months every day, waking up early at 4 a.m. That's the discipline that some paths take. If you can't
Mm-hmm.
take the discipline, if you can't do it early morning, do it before bed, but do it every day.
Just do it.
Consistency is more important than anything. Yep.
I feel that there's a lot more younger people these days that are kind of choosing, not even choosing, they're being shown a path that they can change earlier and sooner. It's almost like the world is
It's,
bringing them all together and saying here, but I feel that that's where so much confusion is coming from and so much of people
yeah,
not knowing who they are and people not having like we're the most connected, but we don't talk to anybody. We just see all these things and then go to
yeah.
bed and wake up and go to work and
I
so
think there is also, for younger people, it's way faster than people who are older. So if you
right.
start young, it's going to be way faster. Also, there is something called, what I see here in the West is something called pseudo spiritualism. So, like people who pretend to be spiritual but are not.
Wait, just because
Um,
you're letting incense every day doesn't mean you're actually doing
yeah.
it. Yeah.
So I see that a lot, and a lot of people who end up following those people, they think spirituality is a scam, right?
Yeah.
But there are very few genuine people who do and work on this path, and people just can't relate with that because they want the shiny stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And also, it's hard to go through actual spirituality because you have to literally kind of die and be reborn again like a phoenix,
Yeah.
right? You
Like you
have
said,
to,
there's all the good things that happen, but you've had some low times and
yeah,
you need to get through those to get to the next step, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like it's very hard for people to go through that. Whereas pseudo spiritualism is all about being happy and nice and all that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right? But you can't be happy and nice all the time. You have to
Why?
understand the low to understand the high.
Right.
So
You need
it's
to
that
experience
that
one to
part is hard
understand the
for
other.
people.
That's understandable, right? No one wants to be low. No one wants to hurt or have to, you know, accept that they were wrong or accept, negative things, or I guess there's no negative, but things that aren't as enjoyable. Um, but yeah, I guess how are you supposed to truly know what good is if you
If you
haven't
don't know what
truly
is bad.
experienced and accepted bad or
Yeah.
sad or whatever?
Yep. It's
Thank you.
hard. Like even
Yeah.
if you look at my journey, I left my country. It was not easy, but that was the choice I made.
Yeah.
Um, then I was in some place else and I moved to BC. And then all of a sudden, I decided to be a yoga teacher, whereas I had a full career on.
Mhm.
I still do that, but I'm also a hypnotherapist. So I do this as well. I do that. as well. You don't have to be so hard and fast about how you want to do stuff. Like, things open up and you just have to listen to your intuition. And
Just
it's
trusting the
always
timing.
never easy. I don't want to scare people, but I just want to tell people that it's not easy. Your jobs will change, your friends will change, people you hang out with change, your family will change. Like, when you walk on this path of spirituality, your whole circle walk with you, and they change. And
Yeah.
you might lose some friendship. I lost a lot of friends, but then those people are not supposed to be in your life. You're
Well, you would
supposed
have
to have
gained
some
friends
high
shortly.
vibration people who can vibrate with you at the same energy that you're vibrating at that point. And that is more important than somebody who's pulling you down because of their vibration. And they will leave themselves. You don't even have to do. You just have to deal with the grief of them leaving if you have. And that's what is hard for people. Like, it's hard for people to accept change and to be in change and to be okay with whatever has changed and everything. Like, that is when people are like, no, this is not for me.
Right. They're just afraid. And that's okay to be afraid, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So your meditation classes happen every Sunday, correct?
Every Sunday, 9:30 to 10:30
Yeah.
a.m. Even if one person show up, I show up. And I come all the way from Langley. So
No,
what's
that's
your excuse?
right. Exactly. What she's saying is she's calling me out for not going to her classes. Yeah.
So what's your excuse living in
I don't
Chalavan?
have one. I don't have one. I found my journey, like I've ignored meditation for a very long time because I haven't felt ready. I felt worried about what I was going to find, or I guess be exposed to. It's almost like I've asked for help before and
Mhm.
I got my ass handed to me. So there's still a fear in there of trusting fully and being okay with it. But one of the classes that I did go to of yours, a couple weeks ago, I started picking that up, and I think I went in like November or December. So it's taken some time for it to kind of, percolate in there and sit. But I'm finding more peace in just being with myself and
Mm,
allowing myself to just be quiet and experience that, right?
yeah.
And I think the one thing that I learned most from your classes is that meditation is not what you see on Instagram. It's not necessarily even what you read in books, because it's a personal experience with, you know, different guidance coming in and out. So sometimes you'll, like, I've been guided by you to do a meditation. It didn't feel right, but then I was guided by you to do another one. And that's the one that I've picked up and have been doing each day. Right. And so, I think if anybody wanted or were interested in trying a class, just come and try, because it's going to be a completely different experience than what you would expect. And you might find the thing that actually fits for you at that time, right? And I think that that's it's very important. It's very important just to trust and just experience and see, because what's the worst that can happen? It's not for you. You didn't enjoy it, and you just don't come back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
It's
yeah.
some people, I have few people who are coming every Sunday.
Yeah.
I had a person who was coming before every Sunday, and then her life changed, and now she's dealing with that. So she's not sad about it. She's happy about it because she was in a shitty situation she never saw. And after meditating, I think she came for like 6 months straight. So after meditating for a bit, she realized she has to switch her career. She has to have new set of friends. Like, there was a lot she went through, and now she's going through that. I know she will come back, but
Yeah.
that's the change that you need to do in order for your life to be more aligned with your path.
I think it's just
Um,
trusting in that, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And people, like, it's not, I don't blame people. Like, it spirituality especially is something that it will happen for you when you're ready. Like, you can't make it happen.
Right.
And you can't read about it and make it happen. You can't listen about it and make it happen. You will have to experience it. Unless and until you're ready to experience it, it's not going to happen.
Right.
That's where pseudo spirituality is. You reading about it, talking about it. You watching about it, you talking about it. Like, that is pseudo spirituality. Do you even know how that feels? No. But you read it.
Yeah. Yeah, but you don't know how it's going to work in your life, or
Yeah.
You haven't experienced it. And
Like
I
it's
guess
not
that goes
important.
back to exactly what you said, is you just have to choose to be open and choose to start somewhere, right?
Yep. Like
Very
it's
cool.
not important that how it worked for the author of the book. It's gonna work for you.
Right. You're more or
Like
less just reading somebody else's story, just like we've just listened to your story. It's not going to be the same for us, but we can, pick little bits out of it to help ourselves make those decisions however we're supposed to.
yep.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Gurukirat, for being here with me today.